Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. So, guys, I want to share with you some things that are just, for me, very, very fascinating. And really, especially like in the last 20, 30 years, there's been so many discoveries that show that, our history as we know it is much more complicated than we've been given. And the whole Darwinian thought of evolution, while, evolution does happen, it's not really as we've been told. And there are big evolutionary leaps that happen at certain time periods, which we seem to be in perhaps one of those time periods right now. And most people won't even recognize a lot of these different humanoid species that have lived here. And the human family tree is constantly getting larger and larger and larger. And yet we know that there is still missing DNA from the fatherly side, the patriarchal side of things, that we haven't found yet. And, that's a big question mark as well. And of course, we have all the legends, biblical, Sumerian, and other, talking about the interbreeding of some humanoids with high tech and perhaps ETs, along with what was here already. So, we are Homo sapiens sapiens, or at least most of us are listening right now. Perhaps not all, though. And it could be that there are other hominid species out there interacting with Homo sapiens sapiens right now, and perhaps we don't even know it. We've all heard of Neanderthals, and perhaps you are familiar with Homo erectus. And we have Homo ergaster, Homo habilis, Africanus over here, robustus. There's so many more popping up all the time. And as we were saying, the human family tree is very interesting, and there was a lot interbreeding done. In fact, there's such a diversity of humanoid species on the planet, and again, more than people would recognize or realize. What's been here, even in the not too distant past, it really brings to mind our canine companions, because look at the differences between a Chihuahua and a Great Dane, right? Huge differences. They're all dogs, and theoretically they could all interbreed and produce offspring. And so when we look at all these different types of humanoid beings that have been on this planet, and you might not recognize Homo naledi or Homo floresiensis. These are two of the more newer discoveries. It is a tangled web that has been woven. So, what does Orkney, up here in Scotland, this island, right above the United Kingdom, right here, have in common with Luzon in the Philippines and Flores Island, which is here, down around Indonesia? Well, what they have in common is they were all homes of a very small humanoid being. And, they've been called hobbits by the experts, because that's what they are most like, is like a hobbit type of creature. A couple of different species, perhaps 3 different species. But yet they're all, they're hobbit-sized humanoid beings that ranged from anywhere from 3 feet tall, 3 feet, a full-grown adult, 3 feet tall, to maybe 4 feet tall at most. And there's been numerous remains of them as well. And as you see here, now Homo floresiensis, I should say, nicknamed the Hobbit, has so far only been found on the island of Flores in Indonesia. Fossils date to between 100,000 and 60,000 years ago, and stone tools made by this species date between 190,000 and 50,000. At about 3 feet 6 inches tall, 3 foot 3, 3 foot 6, they had very small brains, but it doesn't mean they weren't intelligent. They had large teeth for their small size, shrugged forward shoulders, no chins, receding foreheads, and relatively large feet, just like hobbits. You can't make this up, guys. Despite their small body and brain size, they made and used stone tools, hunted small elephants and large rodents, and also coped with big predators like giant Komodo dragons. And they probably have used fire as well. Interesting. Now, I've looked at some other articles that would bring these dates all the way forward to about 18,000 years ago. 18,000 years ago. We're getting close to the Younger Dryas period then, which was just under 12,000. So maybe some actually did make it all the way until the Younger Dryas, the last major cataclysm. Pretty wild stuff to think about here. And here we see another article. New species of early human is even smaller than the Hobbit. And now this is they found this in a cave in the Philippines, and this is Homo luzonensis. So after the island of Luzon where they found this. And these beings were less than 4 feet tall, and it's the second known human dwarf race that we have. First was Homo florensis. So very, very cool and interesting, and they date this back to about 50,000 years ago. And again, do we trust the dating? That's a really, that's a big thing in and of itself, because we know there's been so much done to blur everything for us, so we can't see clearly what's going on. And this is the wiki on it, so interesting that we see these beings, and here you see this, they're dating all the way up to just about 12,000 years ago. Now that would take us right to the Younger Dryas period. And many people equate that with the flood of Noah, but there's been other floods as well, as it appears that we go through these great cataclysms on a regular basis. So fascinating stuff. And when we look at the Scotland part of it, this is Skara Brae and Hobbits. And so this is on that island we were showing you. And this is, again, it's in Scotland, just to the north of the mainland. And this is set up for beings that are less than 4 foot tall, actually about 3'7" And it's a whole little community. It's not one person's home. It's an actual community. And don't you think this is fascinating stuff, Cindy?
It's super fascinating. And I mean, they made this underground. They were living underground. These little people are absolutely incredible. Look at the stonemanship. And I wonder how strong they were, because those rocks are kind of big if you're a little person.
Yeah, these rocks are pretty good size. They would be challenging for, a full-size Homo sapiens to handle it. And so this is a Neolithic settlement of a semi-subterranean earth houses in Orkney. So there's 8 dwellings and a workshop here, all connected with underground passages. And the thought is that they really, they had a lot of open air places too to congregate and have fire pits. Beautiful. And the thought is they spent most of their time outdoors and then just went inside when it was night, or when it was, heading into winter and getting colder. So isn't this fascinating? Like, we have the stories of the hobbits, and the hobbits live in exactly these type of dwellings. Now Tolkien, he probably did his research, and he probably was aware of a lot of the legends and all as well, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, totally aware of a lot of the legends, and I can't get enough of this stuff. I just like to eat it up.
So you see this author's saying back in 92 they were informed that their observation that the Cronoga of Switzerland sounded a lot like the lake town from The Hobbit, and it wasn't just a coincidence. Thus, I was pleased to discover this Hobbit village-looking illustration in Skara Brae. And you could see how they lived. And, at the end of all these earth changes and this timeline that we're in right now, we're going to be coming together more as in a tribal situation like this, big extended families. That's what we're going to end up with as we go out of this period of time and get more in touch with the earth again. And it's pretty amazing to see this and to recognize that there is so much truth in all the legends that we have. The legends of the wee people, and little leprechauns and stuff. Well, they're based on reality. And while some beings might be different dimensional than what we're in now, maybe they, are more 4D or 5D or something along those lines. Some of these beings really could have been other humanoid beings that were there at the same time. If we're looking at Tolkien, you had humans, you had dwarves, you had elves, and they all lived together at the same time. And now we know also, besides, these hobbits, there was Denisovans and Neanderthals that interbreeded with humans. We know that definitively now. And how about Cro-Magnon as well? There is the thought that Cro-Magnon may be survivors of Atlantis as well. So it's just fascinating stuff. It's all so interesting as we look at this countryside. And how about the standing stones? These standing stones as well. We've seen all these monolithic places across the globe that shows that there was technology available, but yet they chose to live in harmony with nature instead of building skyscrapers like we have now. And, perhaps in some ways, these older people the people living long ago were way wiser than we are.
Yeah, I don't think we are the pinnacle of modern civilization. I think that we're probably maybe the fall of a lot of things because we've lost touch with the planet, and that's our spiritual connection.
Yeah, we have. This has been, if you know the legends of Atlantis, it was technology that kind of did them in, supposedly, as there was, the legends of wars, and also letting in some interdimensional beings that would be described as, demonic, or if we were going to talk about Tolkien, you're talking about allowing to enter into our world a being like Sauron and the Ringwraiths. So here we see some other pictures of it. Pretty cool stuff. And our history was probably way more fantastic, exciting, and interesting than we've ever been told.
You know what? They've gotten rid of so much important information about our history, and it's really hard to figure out where you're going if you don't know where you've been, and I think that's done by design.
So we know there's still a few people that we don't have accounted for in our family tree. And for sure, there is most definitely a male that we haven't accounted for that has contributed to our DNA. And, perhaps that missing link, so to speak, is definitely Anunnaki or something else that's ET related that we haven't discovered for sure yet. So, my friends, as always, I want to thank you for your support on Patreon and Ko-Fi. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.